Wait, this never happened? Why has one of the most requested crossovers happened yet? Time and time again, it has been explained to the fans that the powers that be wish to hold such an event, but cannot. The complexity of the clash holds an incredible challenge. One that might see creative power struggles in many ways. Though Capcom is the ultimate decider, this old quote from Ono gives hope. We don't necessarily rule anything out. I know, Ono has since then left Capcom, and it isn't the most profound of things to pull. And yes, it could be taken as a very generic business way of saying no. No, but not impossible, not never. In this episode of the Fighting Vision Unleashed HD Remix, we'll be taking a dive into the essence of this crossover, and with hindsight, we can avoid any easy pitfalls and brutalities. Let's go.
Get ready for the next Fighting Vision. Let's explore Genesis and scenario. Featuring the Fighting Vision Unleashed HD Season 2.
Access granted. Welcome, SHINTONE.
"2022 marks a special anniversary year. 35 years for Street Fighter, 30 years for Mortal Kombat, both leaving behind an incredible legacy involving the formation of an entire genre of video games. It goes without saying that without these two franchises going towards their own pathway of success, the industry would not be where it is today. That doesn't go unnoticed. Both Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter had and continue to have crossovers with others, but not within themselves. Which poses the question, is it possible? If you watch the intro, you know that it certainly is. Official word has come forth. An interest and understanding that complex matters hold the dream from coming true. In an interview with Eurogamer 2019, former Capcom producer Yoshinori Ono would confirm Ed Boon's proposal of a Street Fighter character in Mortal Kombat. It's true that a proposal for a Street Fighter character in Mortal Kombat was rejected by Capcom, but it wasn't me personally. There were many people at the company that felt it wasn't a good fit for our characters. I actually met Ed at a Brazil game show and spoke to him personally about it. So it's true, but I didn't make the decision. The interviewer then asked, is it just the fact that the two worlds don't mix? Ono then says that was a major concern for our licensing. Edwin would later be noted about these matters, saying, two different publishers adds complexity. It's not as simple as people want it, so do it. Adding Ono's we don't necessarily rule anything out, now the question transforms to, can it work? Even with the most basic questions that have to be answered, difficult decisions have to be made. Who will publish? Who will develop? Who will... it simply gets more complex. Looking back, Bandai and Capcom had a solution. One would be developed and published by Capcom and the other by Bandai Namco. As you most likely know, that didn't exactly pan out, with Tekken and Cross Street Fighter still being in development limbo to this day 10 years later after Street Fighter Cross Tekken. So a pathway is clear, a difficulty is set. Lessons from the past will also help guide us. All things truly begin with the signing of a new partnership. Publishers that would be involved, Capcom and WB Games, somehow, someway, begin to end their negotiations, moving along with a project 35 to 40 years in the making. Now that we have an established start, let's begin a possible scenario. Sacrifices have to be made for both Capcom and Warner Brothers Games side. During negotiations, addressing concerns and standards would be key, as well as addressing uncomforting realities. The acknowledgement that Street Fighter as the more safer and much more marketable brand is a given. Street Fighter has proven flexible in its markets, ranging from kids to adults, more so than Mortal Kombat has. This would lead the decision to make the crossover happen on Street Fighter's base, published by Capcom. Street Fighter first, Mortal Kombat second. Yes, that would mean Warner Bros. Games would be licensing Mortal Kombat to Capcom. However, this comes with a twist. This game would be co-developed by NetherRealm Studios. Now, whoever developed Street Fighter 6 would be the other co-developer. For the sake of this video, let's just say this will be Street Fighter 5's co-developer, Dimps. Co-developed by Dimps. NetherRealm Studios, published by Capcom. And a special thanks, help, to WB Games for that cash money behind the scenes, you know what I'm saying? We have ourselves a balance in development, or at least on paper. The collaboration standard of work division has to be met. At what rate, what manner? For this video, we'll try to make this as simple as possible. We already have established that Street Fighter as the base, meaning Capcom Dimps will be developing the combat system mostly. Where does the Mortal Kombat influences fall? Haha, you see, another acknowledgement would have to be made. Mortal Kombat has a much more established lore and universe that Street Fighter itself pales in comparison to. Street Fighter combat system with Mortal Kombat isms in the Mortal Kombat world, bringing the Street Fighter to the Mortal Kombat universe from Street Fighter's point of view. For the story and character interactions, for the most part, will be in NetherRealm's ballpark. Setting off as a pseudo-sequel to the last Street Fighter Cross game, Ken finds himself at a loss as his fellow world warrior and friend Ryu, alongside the mystery of Pandora's box, vanquishes right before his eyes, leaving nothing but Ryu's iconic headband. Though angered and saddened, Ken believes his friend is out there somewhere alive. He is determined to find him, even if he anticipates that Pandora's true origin and purpose might scale beyond the limits of his world and even reality. Not only is this the perfect way to set up Street Fighter characters going to Mortal Kombat universe, it also allows Capcom to have specific characters enter the roster. And if they really want to restructure the Pandora system, what we're really leaving that out for right now. There is no doubt that a Street Fighter Cross Mortal Kombat game would be a huge event, not just in fighting games, but in the gaming world. As expected from a huge, massive event, a massive roster. In certain fighting games, there is what I call roster themes. There is a method to the madness of selecting characters. This game will not be exempt from that process. What is the theme, you may ask? I'll be slowly revealing that as we go through the roster. As for now, I'll set up with this. This game would definitely be a 1v1 2v2 team play, with each character having their own health. With that being said, let's kick off this roster. The Assassin Fist Warriors, Ryu and Ken. Yeah, I could say this is an obvious inclusion, but with a roster as such as Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, you never knew who might be teaming up or facing against each other. And speaking of, who appropriate rivals and team could rival Ryu and Ken?
So we agree, Liu Kang?
If I win, you go a week hatless.
When I win, you go a week wearing.
Liu Kang and Kung Lao, perfect rivals, but also best friends. The perfect matchup for Ryu and Ken. What are they called together? The Shaolin Monks. Liu Kang and Kung Lao are one of my favorite characters to play in Mortal Kombat. Now that doesn't make this choice particularly biased, as Liu Kang, Kung Lao, and Ryu and Ken all have similar relationships with each other, which makes this pair up an actual important, undeniable pair up that would definitely happen in a game like this. Too many similarities, but too many interesting differences not to match up. Together they form a certain type of special rivalry, amiable rivals. Now what the hell is that? Well, before we go on and explain that, there's a few characters I need to add. Adding 2 more characters to the screen, one being the one and only Akuma. Satsui no Haro, give in. Akuma, let's just get him out the way. You know how much of a perfect matchup him by himself is with the Mortal Kombat cast. Too easy, too good of a choice. His murderous pathways in the Satsui no Hado, his way of using the assassin's fist, is too interesting, and also makes an interesting rival to the one and only demigod Raiden. Not many Street Fighter characters can match up to the power of the demigod Raiden. Akuma is definitely one for the challenge, and just to say, the challenge alone is enough to suffice this rivalry. Even without Akuma and Raiden being rivals, both of these characters would most definitely be in this game, so adding them to the roster is a given, especially in many ways that Raiden could be added. Now for sure he will be in his regular Thunder God state, and as we continue on to the roster, I'll be pretty much adding little story beats and reasons why these characters could be in, because we kind of already started that story. One of the reasons that Akuma could face Raiden is to tempt his dark side, and by doing so, obtain a power that's unattainable in the Street Fighter world. It sounds interesting. Now, could it have something to do with a Kamidogu or something else in the Mortal Kombat realm? But just know that Akuma and Raiden will be guaranteed on this roster, and with 6 characters that are undeniable, and I think everybody can agree with, it's time for us to move forward. And why not move forward with that rival system that we kind of teased? What other types of rival systems are there? Expect the unexpected characters, but also expect the expected. Let's hit in the code up AB and unlock some more characters.
The new fighter has been unlocked.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but you're on!
Master of the fighting style Jeet Kune Do, Fei Long enters the fray. Yes, Fei Long. I think he would be pretty interesting and would be in a game as such. Not only is interesting against Kung Fu against the other Mortal Kombat characters, but what's also interesting to note is who could be potentially his rival. None other than one of the Dragon Twins, Yun. Wait a minute, a Dragon Twin without that other Dragon Twin? Let me explain. The interesting rivalry between Yun and Fei Long was first shown in Street Fighter Alpha 3 Max, where Yun was actually playable. And ever since seeing these two reluctantly work together to take down some Shadow Low, I thought it'd be an interesting team up and tag up against Mortal Kombat characters. Now the typical Dragon Twins could be in, but most likely than not, this team would make a perfectly good reluctant rivalry. I think you can guess next who's the perfect rival for Yun and Fei Long.
Hey, Chuckles.
You will pay for your insolence.
Celebrities get it for free.
Of course, the Hollywood star himself, Johnny Cage, against Fei Long, both Hollywood actors, of course, and Kung Fu masters. In fact, what another Kung Fu master could join Johnny Cage against this rival? Kai, member of the White Lotus, or former, depending on their canon, right? Kai has not been in a Mortal Kombat game in a while, but trained by Liu Kang, he knows some Kung Fu. And him joining with Johnny Cage, probably reluctantly, because we all know how Johnny Cage is, would make for an interesting, weird team-up. Hong Kong Brawlers versus the Kung Fu Hustlers. Reluctant rivals. Team members and teams that don't hate each other or not evil, but are rivals of each other that really don't want to fight with each other. And of course, I'm just going to add it right here because it's so obvious that I might as well add it. A fellowship. Delta Forces versus Special Forces. Yeah, I said expect the expected and expect the unexpected. And I've showcased that here. And with that, I example to you the rival system. Now, amenable, if you don't know what that means, is another way of saying friendly. Rivalry. It's just another way of saying that. Those characters represented, Liu Kang, Kung Lao, Ryu, and Ken, represent that perfectly. Not only is this a system in a game that rewards the player, if you pick these two teams, you get special access to special moves and special kind of buffs and team-ups. And special team supers, let's just be real. But there's also a way of picking the actual characters together in this game. Brilliant system, I'm sure you'll say. Of course, the reluctant rivals are given with the name, and fellowships, they're best friends, of course. But there's one more type of rivalry we have yet to explore, and when we get there, you'll truly be shocked. Until then, let's continue on with this roster. Who's next? Adding a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 more characters to the roster. And we already got some familiar faces and some pretty much obvious team-ups. Let's talk about it a little bit more. Now, Chun-Li and Juri are rivals, reluctant rivals. A good example of that. When you team them up, well, you'll get that exactly in the game. This is another rivalry that I don't think people expect, but does make kind of sense, especially with the system that we have here. There's been many times in many situations, well, mainly one, where you could have actually teamed these up in another game, showcasing what potentially could be. As for story reasons, there's tons of that, why these two could be together. But more so is their dynamic between Katana and Mileena. Besides the whole blue versus pink get up, it's interesting to have two characters that really don't like each other have to team up to face another bunch of characters that really don't like each other. And I think these two are perfect for that. Perfect set examples of reluctant rivals, and obvious too. Baraka and Goro are other characters, but not team characters. Baraka, Goro, Blanca, and Zangief are examples of independent choices, but they will all be in the game. Adding 8 characters to the roster, 4 on Street Fighter and 4 on Mortal Kombat. Of course, in those character choices, we have Sub-Zero and Scorpion. Are they really teamed up with the characters we see right here, or are they not? And why could they potentially be rivals with these characters? Let me explain. Now, the first set of characters we'll be talking about here is Urien and Colleen. Colleen and Urien are a part of a group called the Secret Society, otherwise known as the Illuminati, but we call them the Secret Society because that's what they're called. Urien being the president, and of course Colleen being a secret kind of rival to Urien. Seems like a pretty obvious choice. Well, maybe not so obvious because you probably would have had Gil on here, but there's a good reason why he's not there. Anyway, these two would make a perfectly good team up against Sub-Zero and Rain. You don't agree with that? You don't like Rain? Like, what do you mean? Listen, these two would be an odd team up, sure. But it'd be an interesting one to see go down in story mode. What do you mean there's better teammates for Sub-Zero? Don't be ridiculous. Now, part of the fun of making a roster like this is making odd team-ups. Sub-Zero and Rain are one of them, against Urien and Colleen. Now, Scorpion with Takeda aren't as odd. And against the very obvious team of Ibuki and Zeku. Now, where's Guy? Well, you know, it's Zeku and Ibuki. I think they'd be pretty interesting against this team. The verse, yeah, sure. But don't forget that surprise is also an important element that needs to be added. Anyway, moving on. Four more characters are added once again to each side. What do we have here? I see some familiar faces and some unexpected choices once again. Remy and Alex as a team? Yes. But why? For no particular reason. This is one of those odd team-ups, and this also gives Capcom a chance to flesh out Remy a little bit, as it's much needed, and using the Mortal Kombat world to its advantage, kind of making him a darker character, in a sense. Now they would have rivals with members of the Black Dragon clan, or former Kano and Cabal, are both members, or were at one point members of the Black Dragon clan. And I think no matter what canon you follow, these two are an obvious team up, especially in a game like so. What about Nitara? Now she's not very obvious, and she hasn't been in the Mortal Kombat world for a while. And like Remy to Street Fighter, she could be more so explored in this game. Now what about Nightwolf and that T-Hawk mashup? That's a given. They could be more so independent rivals themselves to each other. And with that being said, I think, I almost forgot about DJ. I just added DJ just to add DJ. What's wrong with adding DJ? You got something against DJ? I guess it's time to get these cats, or characters, more specifically, out of the way. The boss characters. Who's returning? And why? Let's start with the arrival of the odd team-up of Dhalsim and Sagat. Sagat being the very first Street Fighter boss, and Dhalsim being Dhalsim. I know, Sagat has since then been a good guy, and I don't see him really matching up with anybody else, so I decided to put him with Dhalsim again. Maybe they can get something ongoing with that. And of course, the very much weird team-up of Seth and Bison. Now this is obviously weird, but they wouldn't make even reluctant rivals. In fact, you could say it's more of a deadly alliance. I had to add this team. And with this team being added, the deadly alliance of Quan Chi and Shang Tsung, very obvious. I introduce to you the final rival type, or archetype really, the deadly alliance. Now there's many of that to be formed in this roster, and it's interesting, because every character would definitely have a deadly alliance with Shao Kahn, except for Sindel. Now this is oddball, in a sense, depending on the canon. Listen, if I complain about Sindel way too much, they're gonna start calling me the Fifth Snake. In short, based off recent canon, Shao Kahn and Sindel would make a lot of sense. And you could even argue that Shao Kahn really doesn't need a rival. But why not? This could be a very huge boss team. And it is an archetype of a team. It's not really Deadly Alliance, it's more so reluctant rivals. Maybe even Fellowship. You can decide that in the comment section below. Either way, their team and the roster itself is close to done. Who could potentially be added next? Who is very much missing from the roster? It's time to decide. Now let's add the final 8 to the roster and talk about why I've chosen these characters. Well, Ermac and Reptile have teamed up on many occasions, but I'll be adding them separately in this game. Both characters would be sorely missed as the green and red ninja of the Mortal Kombat world, so their inclusion is a given. They got shenanigans for sure. Rose and Minot is a team that I'm sure a lot of Street Fighter fans would like to see, so I've added them together. Would they really be in a Mortal Kombat cross Street Fighter game? Sure, why not? They're gonna need all the power they can get against the Mortal Kombat world. What about Gen and Vega? I I think Vega not having him against the Mortal Kombat characters, I think that might be a missed opportunity. But again, he will be facing Shijinko. I think they have some similarities to each other, them having the same fighting styles. A Capcom or modern take on Shijinko would be interesting. And with that being said, there are 54 playable characters in the story, and with a big roster like this, it is expected from the company involved to actually have 10 of them be unlockable or purchasable through quick store purchase. Now, I'm having that being there as an alternative option for Capcom or NetherRealm to decide if they really want to. There is a lot of characters and there's a lot of balancing to consider. And speaking of story mode, why not add some story beats? Why not add some bosses? Now, of course, the unplayable but probably hackable online Onaga and Oni being the final bosses of the game. Now, I did say earlier that Akuma seeking that power could play into the story. And of course, Onaga, being that Nitara and the Deadly Alliance are in the game, you could probably make for an interesting mix of the Street Fighter characters going to the Mortal Kombat world during the Deadly Alliance arc going into Deception type of deal. Mixing with that type of world would be interesting. And taking beats from the original timeline would be definitely a reasonable thing to do in a crossover. Time for some DLC. Now I know having DLC for a game that doesn't exist is a bit much, but that's what we do on the SHINTONE channel. Well, we did it first. Anyway. Sean and Laura Masuda, brother and sister team for DLC. Now I will add that these DLC characters that we'll be adding don't necessarily have to be rivals with each other on either the Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat side. So I thought that'd be interesting just to add in the world in general. Remember, we're adding Street Fighter characters to the Mortal Kombat world, so seeing these characters be a little bit more darker would be an interesting challenge and take. One of those characters in DLC that I think would be interesting to see is Armika. So I'm adding Armika to DLC. She don't have to change too much. I mean, we do need a bit of comic relief in the game, and why not add her actual in-story, in-game partner, Narishiko. Narishiko would be an interesting choice, and there'll be an opportunity for Capcom to explore her character while adding that NetherRealm Mortal Kombat flavor. Going on to the Mortal Kombat side, we got Cyrax and Sector. Now, of course, they would have to be in, right? Why would you not add these two? They would be what I call DLC bait. They're too easy not to put in DLC. And as for the other character, Cobra and Kira. Now, Cobra and Kira may not be your first choice, but due to Cobra's origins, I think it'd be an interesting potential rival to Sean and Laura. I just can imagine it now. Sean seeing Cobra in story mode, thinking he's Ken, and they going off. Capcom can also add something interesting to Cobra and Kira that NetherRealm may not have done before. To see these two would be very interesting indeed. I mean, yeah, we could have added some Red Dragon Clan members, but why not add Cobra and Kira? I mean, who wouldn't want to see these characters redone nicely? I mean, come on, Cobra versus Sean? Unbelievable, right? Did you really think for a second that I was gonna add these lame-ass characters in the game? Are you mad? And not even consider or think about the most iconic, one of the most iconic Mortal Kombat tag teams and memorable tag teams in Mortal Kombat history?
Smoke.
It hurts so bad. It hurts. That Noob and Smoke would probably be the most broken team in the game. Maybe. Their team synergy would be off the wall. In their DLC too. Most definitely. Not adding Noob, Cybot, and Smoke into this crossover should be a crime. It should be a crime. I think we should put this into law. It should be a crime not to add these two. It's so obvious. Now, I'm a big Smoke guy, not much of a Noob guy, but the team synergy of Noob and Smoke is undeniable. They are, like Sector and Cyrax, DLC bait. There's no way they're not gonna be DLC. Especially Noob Cybot. Especially that mofo. He is definitely DLC bait. But the team together, I mean, they were even one character at one point during Mortal Kombat history. So as a team, these two would be a guaranteed addition. Definitely not base roster though. Definitely not base roster though. You can smell it in the air. You know it's true. And with that being all the characters on the roster, there's a few more things we have to clear up. And this is for my people that are still watching the video. With all the characters involved, there are still a few things we need to iron out about this crossover. Now, usually in these episodes of the Fighting Vision, after the roster is done, we usually go to the finality of the gameplay. And we showcase what the gameplay may look like. I'll give you a taste of what that would usually be here. Let's clear up a few things that I know for a fact will not be in this game and might not be in this game. Or maybe in this game as an option. And when you click the yin yang sign that I have at the bottom here, of course the controller means to change your controls, and the settings is to potentially even do what I have on screen here in the yin yang. We'll just say that's a weird type of random team. Yeah, we'll just say that. The option to do a blood on, battle damage on, a brutality finish, X-ray counters, stage interactions. These are all Mortal Kombat isms that I've said earlier in the video that they should probably add Mortal Kombat isms, and these are those things. However, a parry is a Street Fighter ism that I think should definitely be added. And yes, a Mortal Kombat character doing a parry. That's the craziest thing I've thought about ever, I'm sure. I mean, imagine parrying a Chun-Li kick or a special move with Kano or some stupid stuff like that. It just sounds bonkers and off the wall. But what about X-ray counters? What is that? Before I go deeper into that, I want to go ahead and talk about the modes I'd like to see in this game. Challenge Tower is a given. It's an absolute must. King of the Hill. They should definitely add that. A party mode. If it's a 2v2 in this game, which we presented as such thus far, 4 players in a cross tag type of thing, very similar to the last Street Fighter Cross Tekken game. Yeah, something like that. And if possible, with the setup we have here and the mechanics we have here, we can even get a 3v3 type of game. Now that sounds cool, along with custom combat. Now let's clear up a few more things. No MK fatalities. Remember, Street Fighter base, but going to a Mortal Kombat world from a Street Fighter point of view. Fatal arts. They will be called fatal arts, but they're similar to ultra combos and perform the same way. I've said this a little earlier. Super team, special team supers, depending on the rival. Now, depending on the rival, they can either hurt each other or not. X-ray counters. Now, every character would have a character-specific X-ray counter move. Of course, that would fill the gauge at the bottom. There'll be a rather separate gauge, similar to the fatal art. Now, X-rays are the most violent in the game, and I think that's something Street Fighter characters can handle. And before I go, I'll leave you guys with some challenges. In the comment section below, tell me what you guys think would be a broken tag team in the game as such. Now, one has to be Street Fighter and one Mortal Kombat. Until the next confirmation, I'll be seeing ya. Peace. Because I'm not even going front. You know there's going to be a challenge tower, and you know for sure these mofos at Capcom and NetherRealm are going to put together Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, freaking Akuma, and Mortal Kombat 3 Noob Saibot. You know what's going to happen, and you know they will be the most broken characters in the freaking game. Why would I even front with those stupid choices in there not too long ago in the video? You know for a fact that the true nightmare in fighting games has only yet to be truly unleashed upon the world. Thank you for watching the entire video. My name is SHINTONE, and until the next confirmation, I'll be seeing ya. Peace, and pray to God that we never actually have to experience this team ever in the history of ever. Oh man, what a nightmare this would be.
Don't you want a rematch?